but I think Jill, if you could call up my first slide, and then we'll do some intro type stuff with that slide up.
All right. Whoops. Nope. Hang on. Sorry. Here we go.
Okay, terrific. So welcome everybody. I'm Patrick Hollister with Partnership for Health. With me is also Jill Chamberlain with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota Center for Prevention. The two of us are basically your co-hosts for this evening. In theory, we could go all the way to 6:30. We'll see how the conversation goes and how quickly we cover material. But this is the second in the series of 3 meetings in September, public input meetings for the Pelican Rapids Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. Our Pelican Rapids Bike and Pedestrian Plan process is being generously sponsored by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota Center for Prevention. So we're grateful to have their help. All of you are in for a treat tonight because you have 4 guest speakers in addition to myself. So that'll be nice. And I think, Jill, do you want to add anything? Otherwise, we can jump in here.
Go for it.
Okay, so next slide, please. So here is our Pelican Rapids Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan Committee. This is a photo from February, the first and only time we met in person as a group, because this was right before COVID-19 hit Minnesota. But this is the gang that's helping to write the Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to turn it over to Kate Martinez, Chair of the Pelican Rapids Park Board, and also art teacher here in Pelican Rapids. And she has some exciting news about a trailhead and also about a future park plan for the city of Pelican Rapids. So take it away, Kate.
All right, thanks, Patrick. Hi, everybody. Yes, I am Kate Martinez. There's my picture right there. And so the park board in Pelican has been working really hard to advocate for bike safety, bike usage, bike paths, bike everything. And so I just wanted to share some of that information with you. Some of it is still in the works, but some of it is already, we're moving forward. The first thing I want you to take note is that 108 Midway was voted by our city council as now the new trailhead in town. And we did work really hard with neighboring communities and mainly just to gather information about what's successful and what is not successful in a trailhead. And so we landed on a new piece of land that we actually purchased, or 3 pieces of land, I should say. And as you can see here in this picture, the very narrow triangle is Veterans Memorial Park on the far right side. That has been established as a park already that is really quite developed. Across the street there, the next triangle going more vertical, that is a new property that we had donated to us, which is very, very exciting. And the 3rd piece of land is much larger. We just purchased that piece of land, and it's currently still full of trees, as you can see in the picture. But what's so exciting about all 3 of these properties is they're all along a river. And so with the different changes happening in Pelican related to our dam, that also will impact how our water and kayaking and whatnot is used more and more in Pelican. And so it's a trailhead for multiple means of recreational activity. And so the city council decided to not just give 1 piece of land the name of the trailhead, they wanted to name all 3, which I'm really excited about too. And so we have different ideas of kind of developing them as a park board. And next Tuesday, I'm actually presenting to the city council in much more depth and detail on this to see where they're at and whatnot. So that's kind of the main thing I wanted to share, is that we have our land now, which we're excited about. It's been voted on, it's been passed, and now it's time to keep moving forward on it. If you want to go to the next slide there. So this is an image of just across the river, the two pieces of land. They're connected by this bridge. It's also snowmobiling in the wintertime, but it does have that access, so they are all connected in one way or another, which makes it kind of interesting. If you want to continue. Just today, actually, I just finished a grant for getting a bike repair and air pump station for our new trailhead. Just other amenities that we want to get would be like the bathrooms, and the bathrooms is a key one we're still working on. Picnic tables. We submitted a grant for our playground, which isn't at either of these three locations, but hopefully that will be successful. And then we have some older playground equipment we could bring over to place into our newer trailhead to just have these amenities for families to enjoy. So we're excited to hear back about this, the bike repair spot. And then this was a picture I took when I was with my family in Fergus, just trying to brainstorm other ideas of grant opportunities out there, and also ways to create more family outdoor, just relaxing space at our trailhead. And so I love this area in Fergus. I love these swings for many reasons, and just the beauty of them and artistic beauty, and also just being able to relax with your family there. So these are all areas the park board is looking into also to further develop within Pelican Rapids. We do have like that really large plot of land that I had talked about earlier that's still covered in trees. And so we are at our next meeting on Monday, we're really diving into looking at what that could be, and what that will look like as we continue. So I think there's another picture there.
Mhm.
This one is, Patrick, if you want to speak more to it, but this is, I believe, in Fergus. And so in Pelican, we would like to get places to lock up your bicycle. Obviously, at a trailhead is key. And Fergus just did a phenomenal job. If anybody else wanted to speak on that, of incorporating the arts into their bike lockup stations. And so that's something that Pelican also is exploring further.
Yeah, I think the reason I put this image in there, Kate, was because artistic bike racks generally, or specifically artistic bike racks like these in Fergus Falls, is another potential amenity at the trailhead.
Say, Kate, I'll jump in really quick too and just inform everybody that is not aware that the artist that designed those racks in conjunction with another local artist is Naomi.
Okay.
So
I kind of was wondering that, but I didn't want to say it out loud.
well, if there are questions about those, she's here and obviously could help answer those.
Awesome, thank you. Then the next, or if anybody else had anything about this picture, otherwise we could continue to the next picture.
And Kate, just to help you out, I added this one too as just more examples of amenities that could be at the trailhead.
Absolutely. And so two of the four photos are within the Pelican Rapids parks, and two of them are not. And so absolutely, we're looking at ways to develop, really looking for more grants, looking for ways to partner with existing buildings in Pelican, and just before moving forward, obviously we always want community input. And so the park board is going around just to gather information of what are needs in our community and what are things people would like to see, and making it as really friendly as the environment as possible. Yeah, I love that exercise equipment outdoors. Just again, the park board's really ambitious about trying to create less screen time for families to enjoy outdoor spaces and exercise and healthy living.
So now we actually have a poll question, which Jill will administer.
Yes, hold on one second. All right. All right, here is the question. If you had $100 to help with the trailhead, how would you spend it? And for folks on the phone or only on the phone, you could say your answer, but everyone else you can select. And the choices are, I'd put that money towards play equipment for children, drinking fountain or water station. I'd put that money towards concession stand, bike racks, bike maintenance station, stationary exercise equipment, car parking lot, or other. And if you say other, please put in the chat box. And this assumes bathrooms, because since that's a basic function, we all right. And I'm going to give about 10 more seconds if folks are on the fence. And this one, you only got to pick one. So, all right. I'm going to end the poll and I will share the results. So looking at that, bike maintenance station won with 4, but then pretty close. 3 people wanted to make sure there was a drinking fountain or water station, and then the idea of play equipment for children, or in creating the answers, we could have said play equipment for adults, but as adults, we call it stationary exercise equipment. Anyway, so.
Awesome.
Cool.
There we are. All right.
Super. Thank you.
I'm going to stop sharing and take us back into the presentation. All right. So from here.
And so, Kate, just to kind of prompt you a little bit on this one, you had sent me this image, and
Yep.
not to steal your thunder, but my understanding is this image relates to the future park plan, and you have some kind of a grand scheme for connecting all of these parks, right? And you can go ahead and elaborate on that.
Yep. So again, with the park board, we've created, I guess you'd say, a packet with each park broke down as far as what amenities it have, what amenities we want it to have in the future, and then how can they relate together. And so in the Pelican Rapids park system, there are 2 additional parks not shown here, but the majority of our parks do hug the river that goes through town, and quite a few of them are actually connected, whether it be just like the ones furthest onto the right side are connected through our suspension bridge over the river. And then the cluster of where now the trailhead is, they're just across the street from each other or connected by the small bridge we saw in the previous photo. And so the park board is really diving into, with the changes happening in 2024 with MnDOT and whatnot, the different partnerships happening, we're really looking at ways, how can we get connected between E.L. Peterson Park, which is the one kind of right in the middle, that larger one. And then right to the left of it, the Veterans Memorial Park, the one I referred to earlier with the trailhead, that is the only spot that our parks are not connected. And so we would love to see, as a park board, multi-use walking, biking path, like riverfront path, I guess you'd say, that does connect all of our parks together. And so that's something that we will dive deeper into conversation with our city council on Tuesday during part of a presentation, but I also wanted to just open that up here also. I think that's really important that everybody's aware of some ideas we're having. Patrick, did you have something you wanted to follow up there?
Yeah, I think if you go to the next slide, Jill. Okay, so I included 3 images of the bridge. And this is the Highway 59 bridge over the river, and a couple points about the bridge. So, Kate, when you and I talked on the phone about the idea of connecting these 2 parks, E.L. Peterson Park and Veterans Park, by some kind of trail or multi-use path, you even mentioned the possibility of maybe running that trail under the bridge itself. I don't know if you and the park board are still entertaining that idea or not, but I thought that was an interesting idea. And so I included images of the bridge from both sides. This is looking at it from the west. This is looking towards the east at the bridge. The next image is looking towards the west, looking west at the bridge. And so the thing, if you can go back one for a sec, Jill, though, yeah, okay, perfect. My understanding, and the mayor's with us this evening, so Your Honor, you can certainly chime in here if you want to. But my understanding is that MnDOT District 4 has already had conversations with both the mayor and Don Solga about the bridge. And what And MnDOT District 4 brought their bridge experts up from St. Paul to inspect the bridge. They did inspect the bridge. And my understanding is that MnDOT central office determined that the bridge is structurally sound and it does not need replacing. So in 2024, when they do the 59 and 108 project, they're not going to actually replace the bridge, but they are going to redeck the bridge. In other words, they're going to take the surface of the bridge off and the railings off and replace those. So would there be physical room under the bridge for some kind of multi-use path to literally go under the bridge? That's an interesting question. I don't know, but I think it's interesting, and I think it's worth exploration. A couple more comments about the bridge. If you go one more slide there, Jill. So when we had our first in our series of 3 public input meetings in September a week ago, and many of you were on that Zoom meeting also. And there was a gentleman from MnDOT District 4, Greg, who had an interesting idea. He said, you see the building on the left here attached to the bridge or immediately adjacent to the bridge? He said, well, if you want a multi-use path going under 59, maybe you could run it through the lower floor of that building. And I thought, that's an interesting idea. I thought the owner of, whoever owns that building might have an opinion about that. But I just wanted to throw that in there too. And then one more comment about the bridge, if you go to the next slide there, Jill. So the city is also faced with an aesthetic decision because in 2024, when the bridge gets redecked and this railing here gets replaced, if the city tells MnDOT, put whatever you want there, MnDOT is going to put a railing there that meets their current standards for structure and safety and all of that. It might not look exactly like this. I don't know what a 2024 standard MnDOT bridge railing will look like, but it'll be pretty plain Jane. And so, but what District 4 has told the mayor and Don is that this is 2024 is an opportunity for the city of Pelican Rapids to replace this ordinary railing with something more decorative, more attractive, more historic, more whatever. But any cost above and beyond the cost of a standard MnDOT railing would have to be borne by the city. So one of the questions that the city needs to face is, do they want something fancier than the MnDOT standard railing? If they do, how much are they willing to spend on that? And how would they raise the money, or where would the money come from? And Kate, if you have any comments about anything I just said, go ahead and speak up.
Sure.
And then we'll move to 2 more poll questions, but go ahead, Kate.
One more thing I was just going to say about this is obviously we're still in the brainstorming part as a park board and need to bring the city council in on these conversations. But the other thing that we're interested in is the 2024 project, but also with the removal of our dam, how that possibly changes the river depth or not. We've heard, a few various things. And so we're curious to how that may change when the dam is removed. Just one more thing we're trying to keep in mind as far as accessibility, possibly under the bridge to create this trail, possibly not. But that was just one more thing I wanted to add.
Patrick, can I enter in before we go to the poll question?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, I was told by MnDOT the railing will stay as it is.
Oh, interesting.
Unless the city wants to replace it, but it'd be a cost of an excess of $300 a foot. So at this point, we don't look to replace it. I mean, nothing is etched in stone at this point, but.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. I guess I was mistaken on that. I assumed that the railing had to go.
No.
And it was really a choice between a new standard MnDOT railing or a fancier railing. But what you're saying is, at this point, unless the city wants to fork out cash for some other type of railing, that railing itself is actually going to stay. So
that's
okay,
that's what I was understood by Tom Pace of MnDOT, District
Okay.
4. Right.
Okay, well, our two poll questions are still relevant because it's still a question about the community's priorities. So take it away, Jill.
Sure. And so officially for the bridge deck, there's only one question. So we wrote this without the bit of information that we just heard from the mayor, but I think it still can work, which is I support a customized bridge deck. I would be willing to, and the options are support city dollars being spent on the bridge deck, contribute to a community fund for the bridge deck, help organize a community fund for the bridge deck, or I do not support customized bridge deck. So.
And by bridge deck, we mean primarily the railing, but there may be other aesthetic components of the surface of the bridge itself. You could have a fancy sidewalk on the bridge. I mean, who knows what, but it's just, are you interested in spending money to dress the bridge up? And if so, how do you think that money should be raised? That's what we're looking at here.
Just give a moment. And none of our poll questions are binding. They are just simply to get the read of the folks in the Zoom room. So, all right, I think we are, and Patrick and I don't answer, just so you know. Last call for any responses. And all right, I'm gonna go ahead and close it. And sharing the results. There was support that if the city used dollars to spend on the bridge deck, there was support there. Willingness to also contribute. And one lone soul, I will not make you raise your, or ask you to raise your hand, then went with that they'd be willing to help organize. So that's good to know. And there is feedback in the chat box. That was a harder question to answer without like seeing a design or knowing things. So yeah. I appreciate that feedback.
Agreed. Okay, cool.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop sharing.
So okay. All right. Gotcha.
There was only one bridge deck.
There was only one. I'm sorry. Yes, yep. There was only one question. Okay. So now we're going to switch to Wayne and Naomi. Naomi happens to be the person on the right in this photo. And they have their own presentation. So Jill is going to switch to their presentation.
Here we go. And all right.
All right. So, hi, everybody. My name is Wayne Hurley. I am the Director of Planning for West Central and Falls. And just wanted to share a little bit about safe routes to school with the group tonight. And the reason that we wanted to talk about it is we are working on a project with Naomi for which we received a national award from an organization called Smart Growth America. And we're working on this project, and we've got an opportunity to do some demonstration projects that basically tie art and safe routes to school and walking and biking together. And so I'm going to talk just very, very briefly about what safe routes to school is. And then I'm going to turn it over to Naomi to talk specifically about the project. So basically, just kind of in a general sense, safe routes to school is kind of a twofold approach. We want to make it safe for kids to walk and bike to school. And so if it's not safe, we want to figure out ways to make it safe. And where it is safe, we want to encourage and educate kids so that they can safely and are excited about walking to school and biking to school and rolling to school. So
sorry.
There went the presentation, so I'm going to wing it until Jill brings it back up. So on that slide, it talks about, the fact that fewer kids walk and bike to school today than they have in the past. And really, when you look at the numbers over time, what's happened is the number of kids that ride the bus to school has stayed relatively flat. It stayed about the same. What's happened is in the past, very few parents drove their kids to school. A lot of kids walked and biked to school, and you know, when they live in town, obviously in our smaller communities, it's easier for kids to live in town, obviously, than if you live outside of town. But what's happened is those numbers have flip-flopped, and I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head. Jill might know them off the top of her head, but basically we had, you know, the smaller percentage back in historically of people that drove their kids to school, and then a higher number of kids walking and biking to school. Those numbers have reversed. And so right now there's a very small number of kids walking and biking to school, and a much higher number of kids that are driven to school every day. And so, you know, I don't need to tell anybody in Pelican Rapids, you know, you see it all the time, whether it's in front of the high school or in the elementary school parking lot, there's traffic congestion in the morning and in the afternoon. And so, and that's just one of the consequences of not having kids have the ability to walk and bike to school safely and easily. There's health ramifications. There's you know, record numbers of kids that are developing type 2 diabetes, which a little interesting fact about that is that used to be known as adult onset diabetes back in the day, and they changed it because, in part because of the fact that so many kids were getting type 2 diabetes. So that's an issue. Traffic is an issue. Climate is an issue. You've got, I mean, if you look just at that photo, all those cars idling in a very small space is, and even though you think about, well, you know, we're not the Twin Cities, we're not Chicago, but when you concentrate that many cars in a small space, even in Pelican Rapids, it's going to impact the air quality in that immediate area. And kids with their developing lungs, we're seeing more and more kids with asthma and things like that. We want to try to mitigate some of those things, and safe routes to school is one of the ways that we can start to make some strides towards mitigating some of those issues. So Jill, you can go to the next slide. Just very briefly, we talk about the E's with safe routes to school. So the letter E, not EASE, the E's. Traditionally, there have been 5 E's, and then more recently we added in a 6th E, which is equity, and that's the first one you see there. And you know, again, I don't have to say this to folks in Pelican Rapids. There are a lot of people in the community who don't drive, who are on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum, you know, have financial issues, that sort of thing, maybe don't even own a car in their family. So there's a need for kids in Pelican Rapids to be able to safely walk and bike to school, and equity is important in the community. Other components, education, engagement. I talked a little bit about those. We want to educate kids about walking and biking to school, and do some engagement and encouragement so that they are incentivized and you know, can find some fun, you know, ways to make it fun and exciting to walk and bike to school. There's an enforcement piece also, and that's changed a little bit in recent months. You know, we're focusing a little bit more on education pieces within the enforcement category. There's engineering, which is, again, you know, kind of, people think of the infrastructure projects, trails, sidewalks, crosswalks, those sorts of things. And then there's evaluation at the end, where you want to see, you know, where we're at, how are we doing, you know, where are we at, you know, in the future with any changes that have been made. So what I'll say about Pelican Rapids very briefly, and then I'll turn it over to Naomi, is that Pelican Rapids has a safe routes sidewalk plan, which, if you look at this list of E's, covers the engineering E very well. But most of the safe routes plans that we do out of our office in West Central Initiative, they're 6 or 7 E plans. And so we cover all of those E's when we do a plan. And so if there's interest, and I've talked to the mayor about this, I've talked to Don Solga about it in the past, if there's interest from the community in applying for safe routes to school planning assistance, we're happy to help with the community in putting an application together and submitting it. The application period actually is opening very soon. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head, but it's coming up fairly quick. The application's not overly complex. It's easy enough to put it together. So if there's interest, let me know. Let the lesser Jill, Jill Amundsen in our office know, and we're happy to help pull. So just really quickly before I turn it over to Naomi, I also just wanted to make sure that I introduced Mallory Jarvie. She's on the call. Mallory is our Minnesota Green Corps member that is serving in Fergus Falls at West Central Initiative. And Mallory's going to be with us until August. And the focus of her work is on safe routes to school. And so she's also available as a resource to help out. So, you know, if the city decides that, hey, we want safe routes planning assistance application, Mallory can also be a resource for that as well. So, Mallory, do you want to say anything or just wave or?
I can say something. Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm from Virginia, actually. And I'm also 75% finished, and I made pasties last weekend, and I have one in my fridge, so I support pasties. But yeah, I'm really excited to begin working. I've already met Pat. That was super fun. We went and looked at the Central Lakes Trailhead, the bike path. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me about safe routes to school. Or Wayne, probably Wayne first, but yeah.
Thanks, Mallory. And I jumped on the call and you guys were talking about pasties, and I assumed that conversation came up because of Mallory, but maybe not.
No.
Oh, wow.
I
Okay,
started
just
it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I made like
We're just talking about pasties.
20.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay, so I'll stop talking. Naomi, I'll turn it over to you and you can talk about the project.
Thank you, Wayne. And thank you, Patrick, for inviting us to be a part of this conversation as well. Good evening, everyone. My name is Naomi Ramona Schliessman, and I am an artist. I got my master's in fine arts from the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And I actually was born and raised here in Fergus Falls and moved away for 11 years to actually get my degree, and then also to travel abroad as well and do residency programs after graduate school in 2009. And then I moved back to Fergus Falls in 2011 and have been back here ever since. And I am also a mother to a very energetic 4.5-year-old. And she's just learned how to ride her bicycle. She's had a balance bike before that, which I highly encourage parents to use with littles. It's been a great little tool for her to understand about balancing for her big bike now. The one thing that I wanted to show was actually this piece, which is my most current art piece. I am an installation artist. I also am trained in woodworking, welding, and also mold making. I myself and Carl Zachman just finished 2 other pieces for the Children's Museum here in town as well for Otter Cove, which we created a cattail fencing that is for the area to keep the 18 months and younger in a section. And then we also created this beautiful make wall that kids can actually paint on. And then they use a little squeegee and they can erase it. And it just goes into this tray, and it's just this big, beautiful thing that they can paint on and make a huge mess, and they absolutely love it. For me, this is a piece that I recently made in May, which reflects to COVID. It is a convex mirror that you look into and reflects yourself, and you can take a selfie of yourself with this piece. This is something that has been at the Rourke Museum in Moorhead. And also what I used for the materials is actually earplugs that you've put in your ears, the little red dots, and then actually nails with caulking that you use for anything that you go around your tub. So for me, I'm always looking at using interesting ways of using materials and creating things, and also involving the viewer so that you kind of understand where I'm coming at with this project and what I will be talking about. Next slide, Jill. As Patrick mentioned, I have been selected by Smart Growth America and Transportation Rapid Response Initiative, and also Forecast Public Artworks. Smart Growth America is out of Washington, D.C., and Forecast Public Artworks is from St. Paul, Minnesota. The cohort of artists are only 5 of us are across the United States. And so We have Tasha Stigma from Oakland, and then also Jonathan Brumfield from San Diego area, and then Ashley Doherty from Las Vegas, and then also Nadubis Okay, who is from Detroit, and then myself, which is from rural Minnesota. We are the only rural community who was awarded this award. And this award is funded by the Krigsdy Foundation and the National Endowment for the Arts. I'm working in tandem also with West Central Initiative, which Wayne just talked about for the Safe Routes to School here in Fergus Falls, but they serve a 9-county region where I am going to design and implement projects that address pandemic-related transportation challenges and also systemic inequalities as well by creating a toolkit and also artwork that can be utilized to address these challenges. And so when I first started on this project, I did a site visit with Wayne and also Jill to a couple of rural schools to really see what locations look like, learning about transportation, and if kids walk or bike to school, and then also busing too, because when you live in the rural, you typically ride the bus into town, which I did as a child as well. So I understand that. The other thing that I want to share with everyone online too is that there's important data about having the arts involved. And this is from the American for the Arts, is that where 7 in 10 Americans see the arts as a way of improving and healing themselves within health experiences. And so that's 68% as well. Agree that this is something that is really beneficial. And when they're talking about the arts, they're talking about visual arts, performance, music. And so these are all components that can really help us feel that experience of healthcare and also healing at the same time. The other thing that's really important is that the arts improves the image and identity of communities, which I think is great that Kate actually shared a lot of the great public art pieces that have just been implemented here in Fergus Falls in the past couple of years, which I've been fortunate enough to be a part of. And where she shared the West Central Trailhead, that's where Michelle Anderson and I went into the Prairie Wetlands classrooms and worked with the 4th and 5th graders and did lessons with them to ask them about what would you like to see at the trailhead for these play sculptures. And they came up with these fantastic drawings. They even made 3D models. And that's where then we did a call for artists to actually do the project and come up with ideas from what the kids came up with. Which was a fascinating way to actually do that, because then the kids got to be a part of the project as well. So you're involving the community. And then with the bike racks, that's where Wayne Hurley, because he also serves on Pedal Fergus Falls as well, you know, came to Springboard for the Arts and actually talked to Michelle Anderson about the need for bike racks within town, and that they wanted something that would also be artistic and playful. And so then that's where Michelle suggested to have Carl Zachman and I as the artists to create these bike racks. And that's where we really thought about the community that we live in. And within Fergus Falls, we have the prairie. And what comes along with the prairie is also butterflies. So that's where we designed the prairie grass, and then Carl has already made a butterfly sculpture that is that's in one of the small parks here for the kids as well. And we just redesigned that so that we'd actually have these sculptural bike racks that people can use. And it's just been a great experience of seeing kids respond to them, and also hearing from the community that they like having this pop of color or this whimsical thing in front of the library, by the theater, and even at other organizations as well, that just create something within the community. So 71% of people agree that the arts improve the image and identity of their communities. And this can be through other examples of even having a poetry sidewalk, as you're talking about by the river and redoing that deck. You could have people write poems or have other people do things to be a part of this and to create this as a community identity. So that's one of the passions behind my work, and to really understand the communities that I'm working in and what their needs are, and what are the things that people are interested in and what they want in their communities. Next slide, please, Jill. So when Wayne was talking about how more and more kids are being, driven to school, that is one thing that I really wanted to do some research. So I went to treehugger.com, which is a great website with some really great articles. And this, there was a Danish study that was done where they had kids who would bike or walk to school. And they actually found out from the study that their concentration level was way better than what they could ever imagine. And that also they were able to sit for longer periods of time and concentrate. And I can attest to that with my own daughter, where I know that I need to get her up in the morning and she does exercises. And then also too, in the evenings, I make sure that she does some type of biking, scootering, or something to get that energy out. And so with this study, they did it with the ages of kids between 5 and 19 and found that those who cycled or walked to school performed significantly better on school tasks and also that are demanding concentration. And so this is something that I was really interested in, and I'm thinking about ways with this project of creating this toolkit. Next slide, please. But one of the things is with where we live, there are limited options with this of the biking or walking. And so some of the things that we've discussed when going to site visits is actually creating a walking path or a circle or something where kids could possibly have their parents bring in their bicycles for them, where they could do it before class or even after school as a group, or even just having a community area where there would be a path set up where they could do the scootering, skateboarding, biking, walking, to have this activity and to make something there within their community. Next slide. And so the first thing that I had to come up with was I had to actually come up with a logo that we could be using that could be talking about actually the ability of biking, skateboarding, unicycling, even compared to wheelchairs, scooters, rollerblades, walkers, and even wagons. Thinking about ways that parents can get their kids to school and so that's where I came up with the design of the one wheel and then the little playful flag that's coming off of the wheel itself, and having this wonderful saying that Jill came up with of "let's go," and so like giving them the encouragement of "let's go, let's do this." Next slide, please. And then with the design that I came up with to actually creating a walking, biking, scootering, or skateboarding area is I came up with these 6 characters, excuse me. And we picked certain animals, which the deer, the bear, the duck, and the frog are all native to where we live. And then also the kangaroo and the elephant are not. And so these are friends that are coming together to find safe ways to get to school. And so with these pictures, our plan is that we are going to be, we are having stencils made of these footprints that can be spray painted on using chalk spray paint as well if you don't want it to be permanent. And to actually create these walking paths that will be safe routes to school, or even creating a safe path for kids to use in a location, especially with COVID. And then another great thing with this is that you can actually tell kids you need to have the kangaroo and the deer in between you, and you can walk on the frog and the bear footprints. And that is something that you can give them direction, or even families coming together and doing this as well. Next slide, please. And then with these characters, I have created them where they are hopping, they are walking, they are skateboarding, they are bicycling. And so we've came up with some really great flag pennants that people will be able to download and have the kids color. And then you can even just take the little paper hole puncher and they can actually put this on the back of their bike. You can also hang these across in a classroom, in a community center, at home. You could even create it to be talking about ways and safe ways to be walking or biking to school. And another thing with this is too, is like they can start to pick out like the character that they like. And maybe they can be like, I want to go and walk or skateboard on the path, and I want to hang out with the duck. And so I'm going to follow the duck's footprints. So these are just some fun ways to get kids excited about and getting them outside and to be creative. Next slide, please. So we're bringing everything together, and I always use color within my artwork. And so we are using the rainbow theme and including all of the colors. These are all the animals, and they are masked up and face shield so that they are safe. They're wearing their helmets as well for doing the scootering, the bicycling, and the skateboarding. And this is something that is going to be put within the toolkit that will be digitally available. And then also, you know, after COVID, they'll be available in paper form too. And from this, I'm also creating play sculptures that kids will be able to use and utilize where they can actually make imprints and footprints from the bicycle tracks that I'm making. Because that's going to be a fun little thing, you know, if Safe Routes to School does come to your community, that the kids will be able to use and utilize. And then I'm creating barricades as well that can be used to set up to actually highlight where these Safe Routes to Schools are even being thought of, or they need to try out to see how the traffic is, how the kids utilize crossing, crosswalks. And I'm creating a sculptural table that is going to have 2 bicycle parts that will be highlighted in it, and is going to have where we can have the surveys to get information of the needs from the parents and also the kids, bicycle stickers, and even bicycle lights too. So it's going to be an attraction to have people really think about the Safe Routes to School. And I'm really excited to be a part of this project and pulling everything together and being able to come into communities and help communities figure out safe routes for kids to get to school. And even with COVID, if the schools do, you know, need to close down, as Patrick was talking about earlier, that we're around hotspots right now. So there could be a possibility that, you know, everyone could go to hybrid schooling this way too. With the Safe Routes to School, especially with the footprints of the animals, could be just a way to talk about getting out and getting exercise at the same time.
Well, terrific, Naomi. Thank you so much. That's fabulous, and it's an exciting project, and congratulations to you. You're an elite company. You're one of only 5 recipients of this grant nationwide, and the only, as I understand it, only rural recipient. So that's fabulous. Jill, I think if you go back to the, yep, perfect. So if you go to the next slide. So now we've got Ryan, who is going to plug a 2-day workshop related to local food, local places. And I think it ties in very well to the whole bicycle and pedestrian plan. So take it away, Ryan.
Okay, do you see me? I'm sitting in my car outside Escobar's. I guess the question I'd like everybody to ask themselves is to imagine what Pelican might look like if we were better able to support local food entrepreneurs, maybe expand existing restaurants and their menus. Maybe Pelican could support and help start a local Somali restaurant. Think of all the different opportunities, or what would Pelican look like if we were able to put more local foods onto the menus, incorporate into new events, or start a new event that might celebrate our food heritage and our agricultural heritage. These are the kinds of things that we'll be talking about and thinking about in this 2-day workshop called Local Foods, Local Places. So you see me on the upper left, picking radishes. And so let's go to the next slide. This is just me kind of getting you guys pumped up about this. All right. I want you, we invite anybody that cares about food, calling all foodies in the Pelican area to attend. You don't need to be a producer. You don't need to be involved in the food shelf. You don't need to be involved with restaurants. Pretty much everybody can relate to food in one way or another. You care about Pelican, you care about food, you care about people being fed in the town and us celebrating food in our community. Join us. We're on October 7th and 8th. This is a virtual event. We will be talking about our vision, values, and case studies that you can read, get some brainstorming going on October 7th. It's split up piece by piece. Maybe if Jill's still on here, she probably remembers better than I will. And then October 8th, after some brainstorming the day before, we're going to jump into prioritizing some of the things that we think we could move forward with in the community. And registration is free. Just sign up at that link. Maybe somebody could put it in the chat for me because I'm on a phone. Any questions? Short and sweet, Patrick. Look at that.
Yeah, that was great. Any questions for Ryan? I'm signed up, so I'm excited to participate in the workshop. Maybe I can also mention that Jill Amundsen's contact information is on the screen here too. So if you got any questions or you don't remember the bit.ly link, you can call Jill at 218-998-1614 or email her at jill@wcif.org. And Emily asked, will there be food served at this event? Well, I think because it's virtual, the answer might be no. But Ryan, are you serving us virtual food?
We're working on getting a to-go package.
There we go.
Okay, and now in order for people to get the to-go package, though, there'll be a specific location they have to go to pick it up, right?
Yes, and they'll have to register in order to do that.
All right, well, there you go. So, Emily, it looks like there will likely be free food, but you're going to have to sign up for the workshop, and then they'll give you the secret password and the secret location, the secret venue at which you can pick up your food. And it looks like Jill did put in the link into the chat box. So thank you, Jill, for doing that. And of course, if anybody tomorrow morning thinks, oh, what was that link again, or whatever, you're welcome to contact me too if you want to, and we'll get you hooked up. So awesome, thank you so much, Ryan. And okay, so moving along here, I've got a few questions that I want to ask the audience here. When we had our round of public input meetings on the Pelican Rapids Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan back in June, part of the feedback that we got from that round was when we talked about trails or multi-use paths, people told us that they weren't super interested in just a linear segment of a trail or a multi-use path. They wanted loops. And it was actually Deb, who's on this Zoom meeting, who told us about 2 loops that she currently likes to bike, even though they don't currently have trails or multi-use paths along them. But this is, so I asked Wayne to help me map these 2 loops for purposes of these September public input meetings. And so this is what we're calling the small loop. This is, as you can see, 1.2 miles. And it basically starts down near the intersection of 9 and 59. And I'm going to go clockwise here. You go north on 9, then you go east on 430th Street, and then you go south on Broadway, and then you're back where you started. And I think I've got, if you go to the next slide, I've got some photos of points of interest along the way. So this is the historic marker that commemorates the beginning of what was then called Pelican Rapids Village. And then if you go to the next slide, if you go along 9 there, pretty soon you reach the Birchwood Golf Course, which is a public golf course. And then if you, next slide, please. So this is what we call the big loop. And Deb said she also likes to bike this loop. So in this case, as you can see, it's 7.4 miles. And again, going clockwise, you go north on 9, you go east in this case on 450th Street, then you go south on 59. So this one goes all the way around Prairie Lake. And so if you go to the next slide, I also included some photos of what it looks like along this, along the big loop. So this is 450th Street looking east. Now this is before you reach the lake homes along the north edge of Prairie Lake. So this is back when you're still in sort of the agricultural part of 450th. Okay, next slide. When you go south on 59 on the big loop, you will reach the boat access to Prairie Lake. And I took a photo of the sign here. The boat access is owned and operated by the Minnesota DNR. Some of you will recall that a few months ago, MnDOT approached the Pelican Rapids City Council and said, in your concept plan for 590108 from 2019, you show a multi-use path going from the north end of town to the boat access. Do you want us to build this multi-use path segment in 2024? The city will have to pay for it, but we'll build it as part of the project if you tell us you want it. And the council deliberated on it over a couple of meetings and ultimately declined the offer, partly because of cost and partly because they had heard from a couple entities, including the DNR itself, that discouraging the creation of this segment as a standalone segment. And I think the primary reason, apart from the cost, was that the only legal activity at the boat access is launching or retrieving a boat. And they've got, even though they're not supposed to, they've got people doing things like fishing or swimming at the boat access, which the DNR really wants to discourage. And they thought that if they built this trail segment without an accompanying loop, but simply a trail segment going from the north edge of town to the boat access, that was like rolling out the red carpet for swimmers and people fishing and other activities that are considered unsafe in when they're done in conjunction with the boat launching. So I think if you go to the next slide, we now have 2 poll questions in relation to the big loop and the small loop, which Jill will administer.
All right, so I'm going to launch. Both questions will be live at the same time, and to submit your answers, you do have to answer both questions. So the first question is about preference of the loop. So which of the 2 loops north of town would you prefer to have as a trail? The big loop, the small loop? I like both equally, or I'm not interested in either. And then the second question, and you may have to scroll down to see all of the response or all of the answers. But the second questions, I would bike or walk along the 2 loops if, and the conditions would be if there was a separated paved trail for people on foot or bike, there was a combination of roads, shoulder, and separated trail, there was signage that indicated the loop but not a separated trail, there were public events to encourage use of the loop. And so if you can add your answers. And again, this is just to help folks get kind of a read, or help Patrick get a temperature gauge of interest. I'll keep them open for about another 10 seconds. All right, and I am gonna, oh, there was one last minute vote. I love it. All right, I'm gonna end the poll and I'm gonna share the results. And so we have in terms of preference, that I like both equally, took the day. So I can't remember how last week went either. So Patrick, you may remember. And then for what, there was a preference, again, 5 people preferred an entirely separated paved trail. And then the other 3 were okay with a combination trail. So, all right, that's fantastic.
Awesome, thank you. Does anyone have any comments or questions about those loops? Or Deb, I see you're at the meeting here. I don't know if you want to say anything about the two loops.
Hey, Patrick. I am actually sitting now in my car. I would have been listening to most of this meeting, just so I thought I would share this while I was doing my bike ride on the Central Lakes Trail. So kind of apropos. Those were thrown out as just a couple of options related to loops, because I don't know that there are a lot of other options for loops. I think that's something that could be explored as we go forward in the future. But if people are looking for loops, there are a couple of things that currently exist, but don't have signage or really protected space. So that's all.
Super, thank you. Okay, so I think we can keep moving here. So next slide, please. All right, so this is a digitized version of a hand-drawn map that the Pelican Rapids Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee drew back at their meeting in February. I then asked Apex to digitize it. And I included this in tonight's presentation primarily for reference. So if anybody, I'm not going to go through this whole thing in detail, but if anybody has any ideas for other parts of town that we didn't cover, or you get some kind of inspiration, or you have a question about something, we have this map available for discussion if somebody wants to talk about it. So then next slide. When Wayne showed, depending on how you count, the 5, 6, or 7 E's of Safe Routes to School, those are also the 5, 6, or 7 E's of the Pelican Rapids Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. And certainly one of those E's that we care a lot about is equity. And Wayne mentioned that there are portions of the population in Pelican Rapids that historically, and I'm not picking on Pelican Rapids, I'm saying this nationwide, there are groups that historically have had more difficulty biking or walking safely in their neighborhoods than the population as a whole. And certainly immigrant groups are among those types of groups. And so the map on the left, both of these maps are based on 2010 census data. The map on the left, the red area shows the highest concentration of Somali residents of Pelican Rapids, and the map on the right shows the highest concentration of the Latinx community in Pelican Rapids. And the reason why I asked Apex to create these maps is we wanted to see where these populations live, and also take a look at how well served are these neighborhoods currently with bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. So if you go to the next slide. So if you look at the area with the highest concentration of Somali residents, that corresponds to a development known simply as the townhomes of Pelican Rapids. And these townhomes are about 3 blocks east of 59, sort of in the northeast part of town. And so a couple weeks ago, I went out walking this neighborhood and the Spanish-speaking neighborhood with my camera to take photos to kind of get a sense, a gauge or an inventory of the infrastructure situation for biking and walking. So if you go to the next slide, please. So there are 2 main east-west streets that sort of access the townhome development from 59. And the reason why I was interested in these 2 streets is that I know that a large percentage of the Somali population in Pelican Rapids works at the turkey processing plant, and presumably the people who live in this neighborhood that work at the turkey processing plant are taking either 3rd or 5th to get to 59 and then get to the turkey plant. And when I walked around the townhome development, I did see a lot of cars in driveways and on the streets, but I also am taking a guess that at least some of the residents of that townhome development walk or bike to the turkey plant. So This is a photo of 3rd looking east, and this is 1 block in from 59, and this is where the sidewalk ends. And from this point to the townhome development, there is no more sidewalk on 3rd. And then if you go to the next slide, this is 5th. Again, looking, well, off the road off to your left would be going towards the east. The road off to your right would be going towards the south. The building in the middle of this photo is the Spanish-speaking Apostolic Church. This is again 1 block east from 59 along 5th. This is the point at which the sidewalk ends. Also, it appears to me like the street off to your left that would be going east toward the townhome development is actually becomes gravel. The street off to your right going south is still paved. But again, this is where the sidewalk ends, and so there isn't a sidewalk accommodation for people living in the townhome development who want to reach 59 along 5th either. I did not include photos from the Latinx neighborhood west of 59 in tonight's presentation, but it's a very similar situation in their neighborhood. There really are no sidewalks there to speak of. So if you go to the next slide, please. So I believe we are now leading up to the final poll question of the evening. And Wayne knows more about the details of this state statute change in last year's legislative session than I do. But my understanding is that last year, well, let's say up until last year, Minnesota was notoriously difficult for cities in Minnesota to lower their speed limits. Up until last year, the default speed limit in Minnesota cities on local city streets was defined as 30 miles per hour. And in order for a city to lower it to, for example, 25 miles per hour, their own local streets, cities had to jump through a lot of hoops, and it was a difficult process. The easiest scenario by which a city in Minnesota prior to last year could lower their speed limit from 30 to 25 was a school zone. And even in a school zone, they had to jump through some hoops. Last year, the Minnesota State Legislature made the process of lowering a speed limit on local city streets from 30 to 25 a lot easier. They greatly reduced the paperwork, even if it's not a school zone. And I believe, in fact, that Minneapolis and St. Paul have both decided to do that on their city streets. Wayne, is there anything you want to add to my description of that change?
Yeah, so basically what I would just kind of, to reiterate some of Patrick's points, prior to the legislation changing, you had to do a speed study on a specific street to change the speed limit on that street. And it was a fairly intensive process. And as you can imagine, if you wanted to do it citywide, you would literally have had to done a speed study on every single street that you wanted to change the speed limit on. So what the change, if a city adopts a plan that identifies how they will go about changing the speed limits and what will be involved with that, and I don't think that the requirements for that plan are ridiculously difficult to meet. I imagine that Minneapolis and St. Paul their plans are probably fairly robust, but I don't know that, and Jill maybe wants to chime in on this too, because I know she's pretty familiar with this stuff also. I don't think that the plan requirements are super stringent. So if the city were to adopt a plan, they then can change the speed limit, the default speed limit in the community on streets that are not otherwise signed to 25 miles an hour. And so, like Patrick said, it's relatively easier to do than it used to be. There's still some work involved. It's not just a matter of passing a resolution by the city council, but it's easier to do than it used to be. And so that's certainly one of the things that the city could look at. And one of the things I'll just add too is that there have been numerous studies that have been done, and there's a lot of kind of interesting infographics out there that illustrate this point. If someone walking or biking is hit by a vehicle that's going 30 miles an hour, and again, I don't know if Jill knows the exact numbers. I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but their chance of surviving that is much lower than if the vehicle is going 25 or 20 miles an hour. And so, you know, when we're talking about people walking and biking, especially when you look at a photo like this one, where there's no sidewalk, and I don't know if that's in Pelican Rapids or not, but that's a fairly typical street scene from any community in the region. You know, people are going to be walking and biking in the street, sharing space with vehicles that are moving at a speed, which if they were to be hit by them, the rate of survival is much lower than it potentially could be. And quite honestly, you know, when we talk about this stuff, we're not talking about changing Broadway or Mill. You know, we're not talking about the main streets or the main highways through town. We're talking about the side residential streets. And, you know, the vast majority of people, if you were to ask them, do they want people speeding past their front door, past their yard where their kids play? Of course they don't want people to do that. And so generally, I imagine that there would be a fair amount of support from people for a change like that. So yeah, just something. Thank you, Jill. I see that you put it in the chat there. So yeah, so if you're hit by a car going 30 miles an hour, you have a 50-50 chance of being killed. And the rate, you know, and again, I don't know, Jill's probably typing it up and it'll pop up here in a second, but when you get down to 25 or 20, there we go, 20 miles an hour, 90% of the people that get hit at 20 is just an injury crash. And so, yeah, Mary makes a good point too, to think about traffic calming. And yeah, so, and then on the flip side, as Jill pointed out, if a vehicle is traveling 40 miles an hour, 90% of people that get hit by that vehicle, if they're walking or biking, would be fatally injured. So just something to think about. And that, whether, I don't know if Jill wants to add anything or Patrick.
The only thing I'll just say out loud, and I think to Mary's point, it's one piece of the puzzle, but in terms of road design matters, there's a lot of different ways to slow traffic in a way that it still moves, but is also safer for people who are walking or biking or rolling. Again, thinking about people with any sort of mobility impairment. But that local control the reins were pretty tight. And so the fact that that's been loosened on really city-owned streets, which speaks to residential neighborhoods. So, yeah.
And I see that Jane just noted that there have been 31 pedestrian fatalities in Minnesota so far this year. So,
Patrick?
yes.
Yeah, Jane on the Zoom meeting?
Yes.
Would you ask her if our city streets are applicable for lowering the speed limit? Because I was told, being our city streets come off highways 59 and 108, we would not apply for this situation.
Okay. Interesting. Jane or Mary or Wayne, anybody who knows anything about this, does the fact that so many of Pelican Rapids' local city streets intersect 59 and 108 make it more difficult or impossible for Pelican Rapids to lower those speed limits to 25?
I don't honestly know about, the rules on that. We'd have to ask our traffic engineer, Trudy, and I can do that offline and get the information back to you guys.
Terrific.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, I'd like to see them lowered myself.
And I'll put in a plug. I host the Safe Routes Network or Safe Routes to School Network call once a month. Next one is October 8th at 10 a.m. Ethan Foley from City of Minneapolis is going to talk about the process they went through. They did announce, it was right as COVID started and we all went into our homes. But then the city had announced the reduction of speed limits. Like on my street that I live on, it's now 25. And then they went ahead and dropped, again, other city-held roads, but are a bit closer to like a county road arterial, not a county road, but some of the bigger roads were then reduced, I think, from where they were down by 5 miles per hour. So that's another way, just if you were, Mr. Mayor, if you were interested, you could hop on that call to hear their experience.
Great. So
One
go
more
ahead.
thing, Patrick, if I could have the floor a second. Last week, West Central Initiative hosted a Live Wide Open Summit. There was noon Zoom meetings, and they had 5 different days, 5 different speakers. And one of the speakers was Gil Penalosa. He's founder and chair of 80 Cities, 8-80, meaning that things within your city community should be just as accessible for someone that's 8 years old as it is for someone that is 80 years old. And when he was talking about trails and sidewalks, but mostly trails, he said trails within a community, within a city, should all connect to each other. So you don't come to a dead end of a trail and have to dead head back. So that was one of his points. Then the other point he made, that the 20 miles per hour within city streets.
Yep.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for that. Yep. So I agree. So I think this is the last poll question of the evening, and it relates to speed limits. So take it away, Jill.
Yeah, so we're just interested. Do you think traffic speed on city streets is a concern for people to feel safe walking and biking? Yes, no, not sure. So.
And when we say city streets, we're talking specifically about Pelican Rapids.
Yes, yes. This is in Pelican Rapids. All right, I'm knowing how many folks are on the call. I think everyone has had a chance to vote. I am going to end it. I'm going to show results. Look at that.
Wow. It's unanimous. People are
Last
concerned
week it
about
was
speed.
a little flat. People were like, speeding, whatever. So this is, not, and it's, again, everybody should have their opinion.
Yeah, no, it's clear mandate from this group at least. So awesome. Thank you. I think if we go to the next slide. Yeah, so next steps in the Pelican Rapids Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan process. We are going to have another meeting of our committee in October that hasn't been scheduled yet. Then we're going to have one last round of these public input meetings in November. Those will also be on Zoom. Then in December, I'm planning to give a presentation of the plan to the City Council at one of their December meetings. And I'll talk to Don about that, because I imagine that with the holidays, your December meeting schedule might be trimmed down or altered somehow.
Yeah, Patrick, we only have one meeting in December. That's the second Tuesday.
Okay, that's the one I'll be at then.
Okay, great.
And then now that I recognize that the council may have their own suggestions for when I present the document to them. I recognize that the council may have their own requests or suggestions for revisions to the document. And so my plan is to submit a PDF of the plan, including whatever adjustments the council asks me to make to the city in January. And that will then conclude this phase of the project. Now, of course, improving Pelican Rapids for biking and walking is a never-ending task. And so this isn't really the end. This is just the beginning. I'm sure we'll be chipping away at this over the next decade. But at least this phase of it will be concluded at that point. And one extra note, the third in our series of 3 public input meetings in the month of September is actually tomorrow morning at 10. And a lot of us that are still on this Zoom meeting will be joining us tomorrow morning. Specifically, Wayne, Naomi, and I guess Ryan's gone, but I hope Ryan joins us again. But Wayne and Naomi, certainly, if you can join us tomorrow morning, please join us. I know that Kate Martinez can't join us, but I told her that I'd cover her material. But all of you are welcome to join us tomorrow morning at 10. And we will be covering these same presentations. But I know that tomorrow morning we'll have a slightly different mix of people who join us. And so the conversation is never 100% the same, even though the presentations will be the same. And I think if you go to the next slide, that's it. So it's now 6:21. We were planning to go, if necessary, until 6:30. So we do have a few more minutes. Does anyone still attending the meeting have any questions, comments, issues you want to bring up, ideas, thoughts?
This is Mary. I just have an idea. We're right now in early stages of planning for a demonstration project next year in Pelican Rapids. And I was thinking it'd be neat if we could somehow combine what Naomi is putting together with that, because we have right now demonstration projects in Henning and in Alexandria, and Jane was out there observing the one in Henning, and if you know the area, the kids walk down the alley, and then the demonstration project is we have bulb outs where we're proposing a crossing anyway, and the kids were kind of jaywalking, you know, so thought it might be kind of neat to combine the little animal prints so they can see that you don't go, you take a shortcut, but you follow the little animal prints. And we probably can't, I don't think we could do it right on the road, but we could do it like on the alley on the other side. So just an idea to make it kind of a fun, and we could do something like that in Pelican Rapids and maybe work with Kate and, you know, maybe doing something educational too with the school.
I think that's a great idea. Naomi, do you have any comments on that?
Actually, I feel it could be put on the street at a point because of using the spray chalk. I mean, it'll wear away and stuff, but actually just creating this path and having this happen. I'm thrilled that, Mary, you've thought of this as being another use within a community. And I want Wayne to speak for this too, because this is their toolkit that I'm creating for them for smart routes to school. So it's something that's going to be utilized, that West Central Initiative is going to have, and I'm really hoping that it's going to be able to get out to multiple communities and for it to be used in multiple ways, and that being able to go into those communities as well as an artist and just meeting people through Zoom as well with COVID, but just like talking about it and listening. Yes. And I'm sure Wayne has something to say too.
Yeah, I would just say, you know, it's a great idea. I love it, Mary. And, you know, if there's a way that we can do it in the road, like paint that's more permanent, it's, you know, it's washable. You know, if there's some way we can navigate through MnDOT's permit process, and you and Jane can help us with that probably. You know, that'd be really cool if we can do it. And if, you know, and if we can't go on the road, you know, we have sidewalks or alley or you know,
Mary and
spots. So, but I love the idea. I think it'd be great if we could do that.
Yeah, I agree. That's an awesome idea. Mary and Jane, I understand that there would be some bureaucratic hoops to jump through in order to be able to paint animal tracks across a state trunk highway. But how there must be some way to get permission to do that if it's on a temporary basis, and if we use some kind of a material that is temporary, maybe that even disappears after the first rain or whatever. How high up do you think we would have to go? Would we have to go all the way to central office for that, or is that something that like if we're talking about like Trunk Highway 59 or Trunk Highway 108, is that something that somebody at District 4 would be able to allow us to do, or would we have to go all the way to St. Paul to be able to do that?
We would have to check. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well,
But if we start now,
yeah, we might have to file the paperwork tomorrow morning in order to get an answer by mid 2021. So, Mary and Jane, if you'd be willing to look into that a little bit, that would be terrific, because I think it'd be a hoot to, and also be very educational and beneficial if we could get like elephant or kangaroo tracks across 59 or across 108 where we actually want the kids to cross as opposed to where they will cross by default. I think we could make the safety argument for doing that. And I think if somebody up the pyramid understood that this was temporary and that this was for a worthy cause, maybe somebody will let us do it. I think that'd be awesome. Anybody else have any comments, ideas, suggestions, questions, concerns? Going once, going twice.